Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Agatha All Along Episode 2. First reactions, I liked this one a lot. I thought it was a lot better than the first episode. The first episode wasn't bad, it's exactly what I expected. It took mostly its entire runtime to get to the point that we see happen in the trailer anyway. So overall, the first episode introduced us to some really interesting concepts, and this episode took that and ran with it. So this episode did exactly what I wanted. It took its lore and its characters and sort of the world building with it, and sort of played around with it to expand it all. So I was impressed, I liked it, and I'm ready to share my thoughts with you guys. So in this episode, really, if you were to brief it, there is an easy summary, is Agatha is recruiting other witches to help her. That's essentially the plot of the episode, but it's all the little in-between stuff that I thought made this episode interesting. So obviously, Teen, as he's being called, is helping Agatha. We know that he's been a fan of her, he's been reading up on her. Of course, if he's going to be Billy Maximoff, which at this point I think it's all but confirmed, I don't see why it wouldn't be. It just makes sense. He'd reach out to Agatha because if he knows his mother is dead, Agatha is probably the next best choice to help him survive the Witch's Road to bring her back, or however he plans on winning her back, whatever that looks like for his character development. There's another shot in the trailer where he sort of has this, where it's like the circle with a star. It's like sort of this magic thing he's doing, and it's basically a copy and paste from the comics. That's Billy Maximoff. So I'm fairly certain he's going to be Billy Maximoff. It just makes sense. I don't see why not. The MCU's been subtly setting up the Young Avengers and the Visions around, so it just sort of makes sense that this would be him. But if it's not, hey, we'll see what happens. But for this episode, he is helping Agatha find these other witches to walk the Witch's Road. And what's interesting is they all sort of have a different background and reason. So they're not just a copy and paste of, I'm a witch, I don't like you, fine, I'll help. You know, they all sort of have their own story, which I think is good, because the three, I can recall, three and then an added fourth is, there's just a good variety of different kinds of characters, which I think will make this show more interesting, especially going forward with the next ones. And so, overall, that is the plot. Like I said, it can be easily summarized. The episode is her trying to recruit them, and most of them don't like her. But I think what Teen is doing that I find interesting is he has read up on these other witches, and he sort of, he has like a comeback for their reasons for telling Agatha that they don't want to join her. He sort of has a reason to basically convince them, yeah, they should team up with Agatha. So one of the witches she goes to has this list of witches she needs, different kinds of witches, which this character was on the list. But what's also interesting is this character, she wrote a black heart, which Agatha points out. It was a pen, so of course it's going to be black. But Blackheart is also the son of Mephisto, so you can do whatever you want with that information. Aubrey Plaza's character, Rio Vidal, in the first episode, I forget exactly what the line was, but she made a reference to her having no heart or having a black heart or something. So between that and this episode's Blackheart reference, she could be the gender-swapped Blackheart character. She could be Mephisto's daughter right now, and she could become Blackheart. So I think there's some very interesting theories going around with the show right now, with Teen probably being Billy Maximoff, with Rio maybe being Blackheart, with Scarlet Witch possibly returning. There is a lot of suspense with the show, so I feel like there almost might be too much if none of these pan out. If Teen is a random guy, he ends up dying or something, and Rio is just some killable that is unimportant, and Scarlet Witch is never brought back or mentioned again, I think all those dead ends would be a detriment to the show, because this is setting up not only the more supernatural side of the MCU, but the witches side of the MCU, which I find interesting. You know, I've seen enough horror movies and TV shows that I think it would be interesting to have more characters like Agatha in the MCU. It brings a different aspect. And although a lot of people prefer grounded projects like Spider-Man and Daredevil. I prefer that too, but I prefer the witches. I prefer the supernatural horror elements over just space. So I prefer that over Guardians. I prefer that over Thor. I prefer it over possibly the Nova Corps. I like that side. I'm a horror fan, so of course, horror introductions in the show is something that's going to be interesting to me. And I hope we see it in later projects. As I mentioned with our last review, we sort of got that Werewolf by Night. We almost got that with Moon Knight. And I think there are some characters they could slowly build the Howling Commandos in the MCU. So regardless, I'm finding these elements interesting in the show right now. And there are some pretty eerie shots. As Rhea Vidal told Agatha in the last episode, that she's going to reach out to the Salem 7 to come after her. So that's part of the episode, is she's trying to find all these witches, but she also wants defense for when the Salem 7 come after her. And when they all gather, it's interesting, because you do find out that Agatha wanted them to argue and use powers against her so she can absorb it. So Agatha was trying to take their powers, but as it turns out, she kind of needed them for the road anyway, so it's lucky for her that she didn't get her way. But as they sing this song, incantation, chant, whatever you want to call it, that is going to open the door to the witch's road. It's sort of random, but it also has almost an eerie vibe to the setting that it has when it's at night. And while all this is going on, while they're singing, or like I said, whatever you want to call it, a teen is seeing the Salem 7 slowly make their approach. And it's creepy shots. There are these almost like faceless, pale things. One was like crawling on the stairs. I don't remember if the head was turned backwards or not, but there were some creepy shots with the Salem 7. And as we get to the close, in this episode, they do end up going through the door to the Witch's Road before the Salem 7 can get to them, as the door seals shut. So they're not going to get to them through that door. They could find some other way, who knows, but I think those characters were enough of an introductory to the horror elements, because like I said, there were some eerie shots of them. And so it's a couple eerie shots. I know this isn't going to be horror filled. It's not meant to be some scary film entirely, or scary show in its entirety, but I do hope we get more than just a couple shots, a couple of images. I hope we get more of that moving forward, because honestly, I think that's probably one of the best parts so far. So I'm excited. I'm still on the fence with whether or not the show will end up mattering to the MCU or not. I hope Scarlet Witch comes back. I hope this is Billy Maximoff. We can see his introduction to the MCU again as a grown, trained character. I hope there could be some mention of Vision. I hope we get more supernatural characters and enemies and stuff later on. So I have hopes for it. I'm not going to lie to myself and say I have high hopes for this series, but I am hopeful that we'll get some interesting content from this. I think this the second episode blended the humor a lot better with its aspects than the first one. The first one, some of the dialogue, it was almost laughable at a couple shots or a couple different scenes. I think the writing was definitely the first episode's weakest link. It was definitely its weakest. I don't think it was great, but in this episode, it was a lot better. There were shots, or should I say, there were scenes where the dialogue was funny and the characters were funny. So I hope they keep that going, because you have funny characters with horror elements, with the witchy stuff going on, with the suspense of not knowing what's going to happen with the road. I think there are a lot of good elements. I keep using that word, but there's a lot of it in the show that's sort of blending together right now, and I think it's a good thing. So I am hopeful. I'm excited. I want to see where it goes. I've always been a fan of Vision and Wanda, so if she returns, great. If Vision's mentioned, great. Agatha, I didn't care too much for her in WandaVision, but she's getting more character development now, and she's a little bit more interesting of a character than before. I'm still more interested to see where Teen's story is going than hers, but I have a feeling we could be pleasantly surprised, and she can end up being a really likable character by the end of this after all. So let me know what you think. If you saw the episode, let me know your thoughts. I'm excited. let's see where this goes, guys. I'll see you next time.